So let's start, Darren, and just talk about what we plan to talk about. We've had a few bumps getting started, but we'll get into it, shall we?
Well, interestingly enough, it's very much it's very much in this territory of this topic because there's a whole part of life that is a bit chaotic and unpredictable, and the whole theme around the idea of the eternal temple within, and this history of temples through the history of the human race is all to do with a different part of life that's to do with a stillness and a connection and a certain kind of power, and we have both those elements in life, don't we? So it's kind of symbolic in a way. We start off with a bit of chaos, which is very much to do with modern technology and all the rest of it, and constantly having to try and adapt. And I'm old enough to have been working in my career when computers first started being used in the office. And we had people resigning saying, "I'm never going to use a computer; it's just a fad." But then it comes into being, constantly changing, constantly shifting, and it's a technology, and of course this whole idea that we're going into to do with the importance and the relevance of temples in history and in modern times. It's all to do with another type of technology altogether. So
we talked a little bit about it the other day, didn't we? That the life on living life has that chaotic element, driving, taxes, supermarkets, queues, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And all these, and our own body has all these different elements to it, which I kind of work on sort of more basic energies like the stomach and the intestines and things. And just like people look for a place on a mountain or somewhere where there's a quiet spot, hopefully some sort of place that has some sacred energy still. That's the same difficulty we have in finding that inside ourselves, right? Because the human's made of many component parts, but there is some part of us that longs for that experience, that would love to be somewhere that you walked in and there was a special atmosphere and you would feel a resonance with that. But it's unlikely you're going to feel the resonance in your intestine or or in your chin bone. I mean, they might feel something in the throughoutness, but it's like there's parts of us that are for certain things.
Yeah, absolutely.
So part of this was all kind of promulgated by the magazine article that you've written up.
Yeah, and if someone hasn't seen it, then the latest edition of New Dawn magazine.
Yeah, and below the Eternal Temple Within.
That's right. Yeah.
That's the article inside. Yeah. And do you mind opening up just to sort of show a little bit of the article? Yeah, beautiful. The hidden technology behind the story of human spiritual evolution.
And that was one thing that I try to capture with that image that I put together as well, because we're very much programmed to respond to images. If a human looks at anything, they always look. The first thing they look to see before they even read or recognize anything else is to look for a human face. And we're not even aware of how skilled we are at reading the emotions and the feelings on people's faces. So that whole idea of just trying to capture that stillness and serenity of the special location in the human, or at the top of a mountain or in the depths of a forest where there is that serenity and that peace of mind and that stillness.
Yeah. So to put a context to this for those who are kind of tuning in, Darren and I run a YouTube channel with different areas of conversation and study that are also connected to a course called the Ruby Mountain Journey. And on this course, we go through several areas of study that we feel are important for the searcher, for those who are still searching and open-minded and sensitive. And one of these trails, we call them, one of these study areas is called the Human Temple, or the Temple Within. And it really is about how temples in the past were designed against the human framework. And so when you're looking at it, it's amazing to think when you're looking at temples on the outside, it's really there as a facilitation to find that thing inside yourself, to isolate out all the menial stuff and help conduct you to that sacred bit inside yourself. It's an amazing thought. So, this was kind of part of the idea that we've moved from, we want people to know about the journey, the study. The channel is helping that. It's great. A lot of people starting to know the work. And now this amazing article, beautiful cover. But, what was kind of driving you as you're writing? Like, what was couple of the main themes?
I've written a lot of articles over the years, but it was really interesting with this one that the article almost wrote itself. It felt there was something quite pressing and relevant. And, I think at the start of the article, if someone hasn't read it, there's the story of when the French colonized the island of Madagascar in the 1800s. And up until that point, it was one of those places that had been set up on a 12-fold zodiac city layout. And at this very central point, that's where the chiefs or the kings of each of the different zones, 12 zones of the country, would meet to discuss and organize things and plan and really look, which is something that's sort of lost in the modern world, really plan how to improve things and to refine and to evolve in the future. And when it was colonized, the first thing the colonizers did was to set up this military brass band in that very central sacred place. And for a week or whatever it was, play loud military music. And it's referred to now in the history books as being ceremonial, but obviously they had this knowledge of certain things to do with the unseen worlds and the atmospheres that influence humans, that they wanted to break that up. They wanted to destroy the influences that these people had regulated and these people had lived by for centuries up until that time. And so, it's that whole aspect that there's more to life than just our physical body. There's this other realm, the unseen worlds, and we're not taught about it in our, mainstream education system, or it's very hard to find, and it's been, it's been relegated to something that's not important. But, really the understanding that goes behind the creation of temples throughout history. There is this knowledge about humans and how they're influenced by the unseen worlds. It's actually really, really important. And so, just really wanted to play a part in trying to, revive that knowledge and to pass that knowledge on, because, yourself and I for 20 or 30 years, it's been something we're fascinated in, and trying to collect up whatever remnants of this useful knowledge from the past, from all over the world and different places in history, to try and gather that all together, because, I think it's obvious we're living in times of great change, and I think that this knowledge needs to be recovered and reevaluated and reapplied, because I think it holds a lot of solutions to what we're facing in the world today. So, that's what motivated me to do it, was to, try and pass on, highlight some of this knowledge that was obviously really, really important in the past. And
it's like an old creaking heavy oak door in a castle, and it trying to sort of pry it open to secret understandings. But there's some arguments and thoughts like until today, thousands of people every day cover the pyramids and the tombs and temples throughout Egypt and Machu Picchu, and often the arguments kind of get stuck at, like, how did they do that? How did they get these blocks up on top of a mountain? And that is amazing how they did it. Like, how did they do that with the pyramid? And the people argue, was it aliens? Was it the Egyptians? And, okay, fine. But whatever you say about it, the fact that it was that important to them is one of the stunning features, because the Great Pyramid, I think they've calculated 1.3 million blocks of stone, some of them 70 tons, not down the base, but somewhere up the top. All nicely aligned, all beautifully fitted together. And 70 tons, to put it in context, a car is about 2 tons. So you're talking about 35 cars on a big plank, 35 cars, and you get your mates around, to lift it up and carry it over the sands of Egypt, and then you've got to put it up and sit it in. That's just one block. I mean, if they had said, wow, they managed to transport one block all this distance, these miles that they transported these blocks to this, that would already be quite impressive. But to set up a pyramid, and then you got on the other side of the world, people doing the same thing in Peru, much later, of course, in history, but bringing these blocks up mountains. It's like, again, you can get stuck on the how did they do that, which is another conversation, but the fact that it was that important to them. And one of the premises inside what we're looking at is, people feel a vibe when they go places. I like the atmosphere of that place. I don't feel good in that place. I like the energy of that person. I don't like the energy of that person. We are sensitive creatures, we sense atmospheres, we sense places. Was it possible that back in the past people were much more sensitive and they knew that it wasn't just enough to have a nice atmosphere? There was something very important and relevant about having even higher atmospheres, something, whether you call it sacred or religious or spiritual, but something very high. And then the question remains, are you going to get it by one trip to Peru or one trip to Egypt or one trip to Tibet? Because even if you did find a temple that's not covered in tourists, bringing their energy, what about the rest of your life? You're not going to live there. So, we're very interested in the idea of what was there originally, anchored as a force, and can that be anchored in your own life? Can you make a situation in your home that allows those kind of higher energies to be with you? Otherwise, it's very difficult for somebody to get a trip like that. And then even if you did just have it 1 or 2 or 3 days,
absolutely,
it's not enough,
I met someone the other day who'd spent a month in Rarotonga or Fiji up in the island. It's nice to go there if you live in New Zealand, to go there in the winter because it's sort of warm and semi-tropical. And she'd only been 2 days back at work, and I said, "How was your holiday?" And she said, "It's a fading memory already." Because that's the thing. Even to get out of the city and to go to somewhere like Pacific Islands, it's all idyllic. But the kind of natural energies and atmosphere that's there, it allows you to relax, it allows you to sort of unwind and to become more still. But you lose it as soon as you get back to the normal routine. And that's another reason why I was very passionate about writing that article and linking into what we're doing, because it is actually possible. The knowledge can be applied to to be able to keep a more peaceful and still internal state, which in the chaos of the world today, I mean, this is sort of the number one cry of people is the stress overload, and you can't afford to go on a holiday, or you don't have time. Are there ways to create that inner stillness and that peace of mind inside one's own body, which, as you say, temples were constructed around a mirror and a reflection of the human system. Even the great cathedrals and many churches, they say it's laid out according to the pattern of Christ on the cross, but of course it's the human form, and they have the 2 wings and the entry door at the feet, and where the most sacred ceremonies go on in the cathedral or the church is the position of where the human head would be. And we even have ideas with the human temples. It's another name referred to this part of the human. So I think that history and the trace of temples and the usage and the design, it carries that knowledge, and it hints very, very strongly that there are certain unseen worlds and powers and energies that the human was naturally meant to be connected to. But over time, and certainly since the Industrial Revolution, humans been very much disconnected from all of that.
Yeah. And it is interesting, again, around the world, you get these like stone circles. We've got some talks on that on the YouTube channel. Stone circles, temples, all around the planet, different countries have this, and it seems to be in a certain time period. And one of the notions that we work with is that there was a time when the atmosphere was more charged. It's funny, they say today the atmosphere became so electric. Like, normally when people's emotions are charged, it became so electric you could cut it with a knife,
The atmosphere was
You also get the idea of like being somewhere with hundreds of people. That's why sometimes people like actually being out with a large crowd, because you've got your own energy. But if you've got another 100 or 1,000 people, that's 1,000 bioenergy generators that you're suddenly plugged into. And so people can get quite whipped up in the energy and the emotion of some sort of, maybe a church gathering, or maybe a protest, or maybe a rock concert, or maybe the question is, fine, you got a lot of charge, but what about the quality? Because there's also, on the other hand, the idea of going into a temple up on a mountain in Tibet, let's say, and it's just you in there, but you can feel some special quality. So the argument is, well, when the Greeks said that the human once lived in a golden age passed to a silver age, passed to a bronze age, I think now we're in the iron age. And was there a declension? Was there an emptying out of this charge? And if so, are we in a flat period for a couple of thousand years? And are we now in a kind of resurge of energy? Because these temples and places, I think, was an effort to sacred places were an effort to maintain some of the energy that was leaking out from previous epochs.
Yes. I think this is one of the motivations behind the Temple of Man in Egypt, or the Temple of Luxor, it's more commonly called.
Yeah.
That this guy Schwaller, R.A. Schwaller, he studied it for 15 years, studied every little detail of it, and the conclusion he came to that it was really like an encyclopedia in stone about the complexity of the human system and how it integrated with the universe. But that was really like at the end of one epoch and era and the beginning of another. It's almost like they put that together so the knowledge would be preserved for the future.
Yeah.
And, a mainstream Egyptologist would have a completely different view about it. Schwaller was quite extraordinary. He was a deeply esoteric man. He did a whole study of Chartres Cathedral as well, which went into the more esoteric explanation about it. So he was quite primed to study ancient Egypt, and he didn't intend to do that. He was there on holiday with his family, and he went there, and again, an atmosphere, the kind of unseen world's energies that were there, he must have just soaked it up like a sponge. He must have been inclined or had a certain proneness. And boom, that was him for 15 years. So he began studying it, not knowing where that would lead to. But he measured everything. He looked at the numerology of everything. He looked at the symbology of everything. I mean, it was him that made that discovery. It was laid out in the proportion of the human canon, but cut off at the crown, where the temples are. So he really rediscovered what had been, I think, had been put there to be discovered later on in the future. And he was completely discredited at the time, and it's taken very much due to the work of John Anthony West, who almost dedicated his life to making sure that this knowledge was passed on to a new generation. And I think the timing was right, because it's been verified by geologists, and I mentioned in the article this chap Rory Duff, who's the leading expert in the world at the moment on ley lines, these natural energy lines that exist around the planet that, you know, he discovered most of the time a sacred temple or a sacred site is built where these ley lines cross what he calls a node. And yeah, he's also discovered that these ley lines are becoming more charged and bigger in volume. He's almost like turning up the electricity dial, that everything's becoming more and more charged. And he for example does he takes people on trips to some of these stone circles around the world at the time of the 2 solstices and the equinox. And part of why they do that is people want to sensitize themselves and train themselves to be able to plug into these powers and energies, because they are changing, and it's obviously got something to do with the future and these new energies that science and astrophysics are now documenting and recording as flooding into this planet that never have before. We're entering a whole new phase of where the planet and solar system is in the galaxy, and it's a more highly charged zone. So, you know, all of these things come back to being a very practical type of application, because you know, the human system it was designed and it naturally deals in this unseen world side of life. So, you know, and that's something we're very interested about, making that knowledge available for those who are interested, because you can train and learn how to do it, become more plugged into these things.
Yeah, and the example of Schwaller is an example of that. Even though they left it there as a record, basically it was lost because nobody heard about it or knew about it till Schwaller kind of maybe picked up something from Egyptian texts or somebody, but basically laid it out in a way that could be understood. Actually, it's very difficult to understand. And John Anthony West, that you have the privilege of talking to, you know, helped to decipher it. But, you know, so you're talking about something that was basically lost, was very important a few thousand years ago, got lost. Today, a person will go wander through, take some selfies, take some photos, buy some postcards, and they may feel something still. They might feel a resonance. But as you say, a couple of days back at work, it's gone. So we've got a funny angle of approach. We're thinking, look, if those temples in the past, like the pyramids, were aligned to the stars because high force came in that way and the person put themselves in the temple to get a charge up of fine energy. Now these temples are really kind of have been deactivated, basically. So there's a little residue. Some people may feel something, but they're so overridden with tourists that, you know, what was there is mostly underground or totally disappeared. But if this energy is starting to load in again, there's something about that idea that's important again, which is creating a space for finer energies to load in. As you say, it's being detected, changes right through the solar system of more force coming in. So we're trying to see the best of what was, but also to take it through to, well, what does that say that we can do now? And obviously we're not going to start hauling blocks of stone around. Nobody's got, you know, that kind of time or, I think, dedication or energy. But there's some things we can do. We can consider where in the human body those energies would reside. Because you don't go into a sacred temple and go, I'm feeling so moved, and sort of touch your arm muscle, you know, or your thigh bone. People, when they're moved, they put their hands to certain places, don't they? I felt so touched. When we're very moved, you know, a tear might come out of the eye. So there's certain places all around the world, the third eye is highlighted. All around the world, they show the head lighting up with a halo in different cultures. So there are obviously parts of us that are where this type of force can be received. But also, side by side with that, we need to have a kind of a quick look at a person's ecology, because this was the whole thing of Feng Shui and geomancy, that if you don't be aware of, if you're not aware of how your home, or at least one room, can be arranged to have finer energy reside there, then you're kind of working against the wind if you're trying to clean up your own electrical systems and trying to encourage sacred force into yourself, but the atmosphere at home is not coherent with that or conducive.
Yeah, I mean, and some of these technologies in the 17th and 18th century, with Michael Faraday's discoveries about electricity and magnetism, there's this thing called a Faraday cage where you can, and people used to do this, you can set up a room with zinc wires and copper wires crossing over each other. It's not plugged into the mains or anything, it's just it's there, but in any room there's a electromagnetic content to it always. It's part of the standard atmosphere. But what that does is it shields out any electromagnetic influence coming into that room. So, and you know, we've done experiments and research work like this. It's quite an amazing thing to experience because of the influence of the unseen worlds. It's very, very rare that a person ever gets the chance to just be themselves without any other kind of influence. And this idea of the Faraday cage, where all other signals, electromagnetic signals, are blocked out. So it's very good for recharging. You know, it's funny, these expressions, aren't they, where like this lady was saying, well, you know, I had to go on holiday to recharge my batteries. And you know, she loves peanut butter sandwiches. She's probably eating them in the islands as well as she was at home. It wasn't to do with what she's eating. It's to do with what gets energized and into the human in that place. So, you know, you talk about feng shui, there's all of these lost technologies, including what colors you wear, what colors you have your room, how your furniture's arranged. And, you know, people may have had that experience where they've been to a church and they see the priest coming out with incense, you know, and smoke filling, and what's often not explained is that will help clean and condition an atmosphere. I mean, just last weekend I went to our local church supply shop and got a big box of incense because I'd run out, and the lady was just quite happy, the young girl's quite happy to just sell it to me, no questions. I didn't have to prove I belonged to a church or anything. And then I think some theatre groups use it for smoke when they're doing dramatic productions. But it's actually a secret esoteric technology that there's 5 main ones that they have, and they're made from a hundreds of years old secret recipe of various tree resins combined. And when you research into it, and people who've practiced and applied this information can see the energy worlds better. One produces a green type of energy in atmosphere, one produces a yellow, one a blue, one a red, and one a white. And these are to do with the natural energies or fuels that the human system runs on. But yeah, a little bit of incense, bell ringing. This is another whole lost technology. There's a reason why they rung bells in churches and even had a church ringing over the local village. This was all to do with cleaning and clearing atmospheres to allow those finer types of atmospheres and influences to be nearby people, rather than dispersed and broken up like the brass band in a Madagascan sacred site example, you know. But the whole world's become a bit like that. Traffic and aircraft and cell phone towers outside your house, the whole lot of it. It's like an intense electromagnetic pollution.
Yeah. So, you know, one of the things that we want to do is get into the process of entering a temple. Let's say you were lucky enough to get to some temple, and you were secondly in some mountain, could be Machu Picchu, and you were secondly lucky enough, and it's unlikely that there were nobody else there.
Right. Yes.
Would you just walk straight in? You know, there's something in our instinct. I mean, people do today. You know, you see the tourists just come straight through, of course. But if you knew that it was actually activated and there was something inside that temple, there was something special, just like the original temple of Solomon, you know, the Solomon's temple. I mean, the Jewish people still go to the remaining wall and feel that there's a residue still in the wall, because that wall was part of and captured the radiations of what anchored there at a certain time. And of course, people didn't just walk in anyway. There was a chain separating people out. so they could not go into the main, area of the Holy of Holies. But around the world, same types of setups, somewhere sacred. There's something in us that knows we can't just go walking in. In fact, most places have a kind of procedure before you go in, some sort of cleansing procedure. And then there's a relevance about the gate itself or the doorway. You'll see some of the doorways are very, very special. And there's a reason there's an emphasis on the doorway. And then there's the process inside. So we're kind of using this live to talk about the article, but also to let people know that we want to offer a couple of workshops to go through these three processes of approaching a place, even if it was external or within oneself. Approaching somewhere that's got a high energy, the importance of the pause and the transition, which a gate or a doorway is. Just like cats stop at doorways. We have a cat drives me crazy. Once you get out, you open the door, it stops. People think, why is it stopping? But the cats are very sensitive. Their whiskers are always they have lines of force coming out from the whiskers. They're detecting the new atmosphere on the other side of the doorway, and the process inside. So there's certain things that are important to do in each of these steps, and it applies just as much if you did happen to get to a temple somewhere in the Himalayas, or if you want to arrange your home and do a certain process with yourself to approach the more sacred areas of the human system. And it'll be a kind of live experience, because as we're talking more, we'll probably talk a lot there too. We like to talk, but we're also going to be doing more practical work, because it involves cleaning and clearing your own electromagnetic system. It involves understanding transitions into different levels of astral light, where you need to be in yourself, how to settle, how to find that quiet space, how to find that place that we long to be in, but we tend to go in and get flung out now and then, luckily, throughout life. But how to find that special place in yourself and stay there to cultivate more time in your own inner temple.
And that's the thing that I love about this work and the Ruby Mountain online course, is that it's very practically based, because it's that gnosis idea that I mentioned in the article, where in the past, before established and organized religion, it was this idea that a temple would be set up like a teaching school, and it would have a special atmosphere and certain rare kinds of powers and energies, but the person would do the preparation work and balance and align themselves and have the ideas and the concepts so that they could actually connect to that and feel it for themselves. So it wasn't what somebody else said, they knew. And that's the whole idea behind the workshops and all the work that we've gleaned over the years, because, we must have worked with hundreds of people over the years and seen amazing results, because that's what it's based in, as it should be naturally, that you can get the knowledge and then practically apply that and then get the result for yourself. And living in New Zealand, you're never too far away from the bush or the beach, but I still do that. Even if I'm just going for a walk through the forest, I'll stop outside the forest. I'll calm myself down. I will sort of let the forest know, because it's not just one life form, it's multiple life forms all integrated together, and it has its own atmosphere and its own energy. So just to make that intention makes all the difference. And I saw a really, really good example. It was a BBC documentary, and the interviewer there was interviewing people who lived at the base of the mountain in Tibet, the base of Mount Everest. And the reporter was a bit cocky and a bit disrespectful, really, I thought, because he said to one of these people, he said, well, Everest is only just up there. How come you guys don't climb it? And the person just looked very calmly at them and through a translator said, well, our home is here. Our gods live at the top of the mountain. Otherwise implying that wasn't their place to be. It was something else altogether from normal life. And I thought, there's a mind state and an attitude about the unseen worlds that has a respect about it that makes all the difference. All the difference in it. Yeah.
I took 2 groups to Peru, next door neighbor of Brazil, totally different country. And again, look how important the sacred is, because just in Cusco alone, there's 360 sacred sites around the city, and one for every day of the year, basically. But the shaman, who had been trained as a shaman since she was a girl, because I applied the methodology that we're going to study in the workshops of stopping and approaching with the right way, adjusting and sensing, and with the right degree of respect and pre-preparation with your own aura, because you've got to kind of neutralize your system. Because think of it this way: if you're filled with different energies from the day, from the week, from the month, from your life, and then you bring all that towards a place that's got a sacred atmosphere, guess what's going to happen? The sacred is not going to insist with you. It will tend to withdraw. It can happen. It's quite a weird thing, the idea of this cloud backing into a stone, but that's this electrical cloud, but that's what happens. Because we did it the right way, she was often in tears at places that she had visited hundreds of times over her lifetime, maybe thousands. And she said, I've never felt it like this before. I've never had this experience before. So that's on an external form, but we want to show that you can apply it with you in your own house, in your own life. Because again, lucky you if you can get to Peru or Tibet for a few days, wonderful experience. But in the living of life, is there a place we can go to in ourselves that has that opportunity to be with energies that refresh and lift you up? So that's what we're going to look at in the workshop. And people who are watching now, thank you for watching. People who are going to be seeing this later during the week, I hope you can also check in and participate in the workshop. If you register for the workshop, people who are registered are going to get a recording of what we do in case the time doesn't fit well. I think that's important. We kind of have always been putting off the idea of recording the calls and processes, because it's nice to have that direct live engagement. Even this feels weird, just recording this live. But with so many demands, in life today, we think it's a nice facility to offer, to pick it up and study later. And so again, we hope to see you in the workshop. It'll be a live interchange. It won't be like this. We'll be on Zoom. We'll be able to answer questions direct through exercises to have a live experience at the point. You can see more about it on the channel, Ruby Mountain channel, or in the link in the YouTube description below. So, and buy New Dawn magazine and read Darren's art. Can you hold it up again, Darren? Just do a plug for the magazine.
Yeah, latest New Dawn, just released, beginning of October. And
if you put New Dawn magazine in Google, it'll come up, right?
Yep.
And there's other interesting articles in there, but that's the best one.
No bias, yeah.
No bias at all. Darren, hey, thank you. Thank you for those of you.
Thanks, Colin.
All right, bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye.